What's up, everyone? Welcome to Star Wars Canon Connections, our Padawan podcast spin-off show where we cover everything in the canon world of Star Wars universe, actually galaxy, whatever you want to say. Books, comics, TV shows, short films, whatever's out there. Today we're going to be covering the most recent novel, Rebel Rising. It covers the life of Jyn Erso from the moment she was left on her home planet by her parents to the moment leading up to Rogue One, and therefore after, actually.
Yeah.
It is written by Beth Revis, and it came out in early May. I definitely recommend checking this out just to start. And this will be a spoiler discussion of Rebel Rising, as you know, we can't talk in depth about this novel without going into some kind of spoiler. So if you don't want to hear it, go back, bookmark the video, and come back to it later. So let's get right into it, Jacob. First initial thoughts of this novel, you know, what kind of the highlights that stood out to you? We'll get into everything a little later, but just initial thoughts.
Initial thoughts, I really enjoyed this book. It was a simple, easy book to get through.
Yeah.
There wasn't too much detail, it was straightforward, and that's something that I really appreciated about it. I love how it literally covers everything that happened in Jyn Erso's life, with the exception of a few huge time jumps, years at some points. But yeah, you kind of get the idea, if you listen to Catalyst and listen to this book and then you watch Rogue One, you kind of know Jyn's whole entire life story, which is a really cool package if you do them all together, which I talked about on the Padawan podcast. But yeah, overall I really enjoyed it. The writing got a little weird to me at points. I didn't love most of the writing, but I just thought overall it was a great character study of Jyn Erso, and as a fan of Jyn Erso and Rogue One and Catalyst and the Erso family overall, and actually this book made me a fan of the Saw and Jyn relationship before I really wasn't from Rogue One, so I definitely enjoyed the book overall.
Yeah, I echo all your points. It's, like you said, it's very much a character study of Jyn Erso, and we already loved her from the film Rogue One, but this just makes it better.
Yes.
We really get in depth about who she is.
Well, yeah, rewatching Rogue One after this makes the movie so much more
Exactly, and I can't wait to go back because now I'm going to know what happened to that giant time gap from when she was a kid in Rogue One until we first see her in the prison in Rogue One. Yeah, there's some really cool moments in this book too, and like you had said, it makes the Saw and Jyn relationship better. There's some very, very important life events for her that kind of made her who she was in Rogue One. And it's a really cool book, even though maybe, like you had said, wasn't written so well. The structure was cool because it's almost like 3 or 4 different sections of her life that we're focusing on.
I like how it jumps back and forth to different time periods. I'm not talking about that, I'm just talking about the words that were written.
Well, yeah, and so it's really cool how, in Aftermath series, there was the interludes. It was more of her life in prison.
Yeah,
they kept going back to her life in prison.
But it ties into her overall story, so it makes sense.
Exactly. So yeah, there's some really, really cool things in this book, and let's just get into it real quick. Let's start off with the Saw and Jyn relationship. And we saw a little bit of a Rogue One. It was kind of hinted at, and obviously a lot of us weren't fans of the character of Saw Gerrera in Rogue One anyway, kind of how he was portrayed. Very different in this book.
Yes.
He's kind of the Saw that we always wanted to see.
Yeah.
And we see him from the moment he picks up Jyn in that hatch on their home planet, kind of trains her to be this soldier-type character. And what I really got from this relationship between them is that Saw kind of passed the torch from his sister Steela to Jyn.
Yeah, in a way.
He was pretty much raising Jyn to be his sister because he knew that Steela from the Clone Wars series was really this light in the rebellion before the rebellion was even there.
Oh yeah.
And it was kind of evident, she has this necklace from her mom, which we saw in Rogue One, the Kyber crystal. Saw gave her Steela's scarf to cover it up, almost like
a big part in this book.
Passing of the torch sort of thing. And so that was really just the relationship was pretty much built on Saw growing her to be Steela or a Steela-like character. Forward for
that
the rebellion.
Was a great part of this book. He talked about losing his sister a little bit.
Well, he told her the story.
That actually happens in the Clone Wars series, and he talks about how there was a Jedi there that was Ahsoka who tried to save her. So that little connection was cool. That's why I love all this canon stuff, because you can reference the prequels, the new movies, that time period, and the shows. You can reference it all, and I really love that relationship. And Saw says they need somebody to stand behind, the rebellion, or they need someone to give them hope,
to give them a light.
He references that his sister was that before, and it kind of leads into Jyn becoming that, leading up to Rogue One. without Jyn, we may have never gotten the Death Star plans, and without her relationship with Saul, she wouldn't have became who she is. So I think if you watch those episodes with Saul from the Clone Wars, and then read Catalyst, and then read this book, and then do Rogue One, like it's all a huge cool connection.
It's like a really cool trilogy.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
So moving on, you know, I think do you have anything important that you want to talk about before I get into the Idrissa Hatter stuff?
Yeah, so that's kind of in the middle of the book. So I mean, I want to talk a little bit about her time at Saw's camp. I don't know what they were calling it, like the bunker or whatever that they stayed in.
That's right.
So you kind of that was probably my least favorite part of the book, was the beginning and the setup, and you have all these different characters coming and going,
bunch, yeah.
This book, I didn't get attached to any of the side characters at all. I only really cared about Jyn and Saul. While in the other books there's like 5 or 6 characters that I'm attached to, this one it's like there's so many different characters that are coming, like I don't even remember most of their names.
Well, it's so focused on Jyn too.
Yeah, exactly, which I like. I don't really want to go into depth in any other characters, but I didn't really stick with any of those characters in the beginning of the book that kept coming and going and leaving the camp. I know she learned certain things, and there's a bunch of cool little details about Jyn, because you wonder, like, all right, so Jyn's a girl, she has to take care of herself. They explain how one of Saw's friends that was a woman, like, talked to Jyn about hygiene and keeping yourself clean and all that. So it's just kind of cool. Like, you're in this big, huge galaxy, but they're still people, and they need to take care of themselves. They need to survive. They need to eat. They need shelter, and it's like you kind of got that feeling throughout the whole book, but especially in the beginning for me. So I did like a lot of the stuff in the beginning, but it was probably my least favorite part of the book, because it was so...
There was so much going on.
Yeah, there wasn't really any plot at the beginning of the book, so...
It was just kind of like a description of who she was. It didn't really have like a tie-in.
But I did like the her and Saw stuff, because I never got that they had a father-daughter relationship in Rogue One, but in this book I felt that father-daughter relationship.
They mentioned it plenty of times that Jyn is Saw's daughter.
Yeah, they even call her Jyn Guerrera at one point. Yeah, so... And basically, Saw's just trying to keep anyone from finding out who Jyn is. And because the Rebellion or the Empire are going to use that against her.
Yeah, so moving on from that, we can kind of probably talk about the Hatter and Idrissa stuff, which is the mother-son that they come into contact with. And I think, if I remember correctly, she ends up on Idrissa's ship as kind of like a hand.
She lies to her and tells her that she can fix her droid.
Yes, that's right.
And then she does the clearance codes.
Exactly.
Well, that's what I was going to mention earlier. I love how Jyn knows how to do the clearance codes for the Empire.
That's one thing I did want to talk about, is now we know really why she ended up where she was in Rogue One.
Yeah. So I rewatched Rogue One, and they don't show her putting in the codes, but I think... I mean, that would make sense if she had the codes, right? Because
I think it was when K2SO was saying, Rogue One, the call sign.
Well, that's when they left.
Yeah.
And then when they're entering the Scarif, right?
Yeah, Scarif, yeah.
And then they
the shield gate.
Is it Brody? What's his name?
Bodhi.
He gives the codes, and I'm pretty sure those codes came from Jyn. That would make sense after reading this book. And it's just cool that kind of helped her survive, knowing how to do that. Because how was she going to work for somebody to eat? That was like her main skill, was doing those Imperial codes. So I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, no, it's a great...
And that's how she got on board with Idrissa.
Yeah, it's a cool detail, because we don't have that in the Star Wars universe. We don't. Yeah. And she can really honestly kind of play both sides with that. And she had been working on it since she was really young. Like, she was working on a tech piece when she was in a meeting with Saw and the Rebels. But yeah, I think that for me, one of the coolest parts of this book was the Jyn, Hatter, and Idrissa stuff, the kind of family element they had. I personally really enjoyed it. I think Hatter is actually a much more important character that people are giving him for. Okay. And Idrissa had a huge part in that. But the time that she had with them really like explains that this girl's life is completely shattered.
Yeah,
and
she's faced so much tragedy.
Over and over again that. One thing, it just keeps going.
Well, she loses her parents.
Yes.
Then she loses Saul. Like, Saul doesn't die, but
Saul leaves her.
She gets abandoned by Saul.
Then Hatter and Idrissa.
And then the thing with Hatter and Idrissa. So, look, I like that Jyn found another family for however long that time period was. It was a couple years. Like, that was cool. And then how she gets disconnected from them. But I didn't love the romance stuff. That was one of my negatives. And there's part of me that's like, okay, at least Jyn got to experience some type of romance before she goes on and helps the Rebellion and ends up dying in Rogue One. I like that she got to experience that, but I didn't buy the relationship, and I don't like romance in Star Wars. I mean, other than Han and Leia, I never really liked
no one will top him.
romance in Star Wars. I mean, Han and Leia is the greatest love story ever told. I always say that, but I don't know. I wasn't feeling the her and Hatter relationship. Did you like it? I mean, it seems like you
I
did
enjoyed
like
it.
Yeah?
I enjoyed it.
Okay.
I think that he was a great counter because she is someone who, because of all the events that have happened in her life, there's so much struggle and pain. Like she has a negative outlook on everything.
Yeah, and she finally got to feel something.
He brought
happy.
so
Yeah,
much light and positivity,
that.
and he had so much going for him. And after everything that happened, it just knowing who she is in Rogue One. Like you look at this book and she says it, and like she's basically blaming everything that happens on herself.
Yeah,
And she really, really feels bad about herself and because of everything that's going on, and that you could see that in Rogue One. Like that's why she doesn't want to take part in everything. Because of everything that happened.
Yeah,
before.
every time she gets involved with people, things go bad.
Exactly.
I do like what Hatter represents. I loved their friendship. I love when they first met and how they have a friendship.
He's very playful.
I would have rather gone a brother-sisterly relationship, but I get it. You want this. You don't want this girl to go her whole life without experiencing love. Like that's horrible. So I like what he represents. I more liked her relationship with Adrissa and how Adrissa, losing her daughter and then finally finding another version of that in Jyn. I thought that was cool, but I kind of dislike. So there's certain points in this book where it jumps like a year
Huge
forward
gap,
in one sentence, and then at the same time they'll take a whole chapter to explain 5 minutes. So it's like there's so many different time jumps, and the pacing was a little bit off for me, and I felt that the most in her time with Adrissa and Hatter. But I do like the book progressively got better. Like the stuff at Saw's camp was pretty good, and then I did like the stuff with Adrissa and Hatter, and then the end of the book, the third act, if you will, was my favorite part of the book. We'll get into that pretty soon, but I was half and half on the Hatter and Adrissa relationship stuff.
Yeah. Well, anything else? I mean, anything important you want to talk about?
Not really in that time era.
Yeah, well, let's move on. What's next? What you got?
So, all right, so my favorite parts of this whole entire book is when she's on the 5-point system. So after she leaves the Hatter and Adrissa stuff, Jyn's kind of like this drifter. She's just trying to survive. And I love the stuff. She's on this 5-point system, and I believe there's 5 planets like rotating one star, and like she can't really leave. She ends up working for this Imperial officer and like forging credits, like casino credits.
She's so good at it.
All of that stuff was so cool. And another thing, and this goes back to her training with Saul, Jyn is a badass. You do not mess with Jyn. Like she could, I mean, we saw that in Rogue One, but this explains how much of a badass she is. She can take out a grown man that's 3 times her size. And you really got that throughout this whole book.
She learned from Saw very, very well.
And I like how she's just kind of like this lone survivor on these 5-point systems. Like she's hanging out in bars, having a few drinks. She has men and women hitting on her all the time, trying to take her back to their pads. And like she's just like, no, leave me alone. Like, and that is when I really got attached to Jyn in this book. And there's a moment when she's on the 5-point system where she's watching these homeless people, and like this Imperial guy's kicking the homeless people, like, how dare you take Imperial credits? Like, you're like scum, you're begging. And then Jyn's like, if it came down to it and I had to beg for money, she's like, I would have no shame in that. And then she's also said, and they were like, but Jyn didn't give them any of her credits, and she also had no shame in that. And I love that line because that's realistic. If you have to survive, and she only had like 80 credits or something left, and like I care about myself more than I care about a homeless person. Like I feel bad for them, but I come first, and I love that mentality that they put on Jyn.
Yeah, she kind of like she's like you said, very much a lone wolf who she feels bad for everything, but she knows that she can't do anything because she has to fight herself.
She says several times, all I care about is getting paid, eating, surviving. And I love that sequence where she's like, food, shelter, weapons. Like,
well, and you see that in Rogue One when Saw or someone had asked her, "You don't care to see the Imperial flag fly?" She goes, "As long as I don't look up, I don't care."
Exactly. It's not a problem if you're not looking up or something
That's
like
the line.
that.
Exactly. So I thought that it was great. It's just a cool part of Star Wars.
Like I want to see 5 points in live
exactly.
action,
Like
you know?
it's a cool introduction to a different side of Star Wars that we don't know. Like what kind of scum and villainy is there? What is the
it
the
seemed
Empire?
Like a really interesting.
What kind of presence
honestly.
does the Empire really have there? Like what goes on? And so it kind of teases us for what Star Wars can be, and hopefully we'll see that in the future one day. And whether it's at that time period or later on, but it was definitely a very cool part of the book to kind of see, Jyn really surviving on her own and experience a whole different side of the universe, and just surviving on a different side of the universe.
Yeah. So I would say as a negative, there's not really a plot to this book. If you really
No.
think about it, there's not like one thing that she's trying to accomplish, and she accomplishes it by the end. It's kind of just following her drift, and I like that because we learn a lot about her, but just as far as a structure of a plot, it didn't really deliver that well.
It's very much like Boyhood.
Yeah, exactly.
Very much like
That's
Boyhood.
perfect, because Boyhood doesn't have a plot.
No.
And I enjoyed that movie because you're just watching this character drift through life, and that's
years.
exactly what Jyn Erso, this book was.
It's character study, flat out. That's all it is.
Why don't we talk about the prison scenes? So, and I love how like every time it cuts back to it's like Liana Howick incarcerated for.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
then
Weapons
he
charge,
reads
2
that
accounts, or
in
whatever
Rogue
it is.
One, he reads those charges to her when she meets up with the rebels. So I did like. At first, I was caught off guard by those.
I wasn't expecting it.
It came out of nowhere, and they kept going back to it. And there were some really cool moments. In
well, we kind of
scenes,
found out how long she was really in there. It was like months at a time. It wasn't just a couple days or weeks. It was.
Oh,
it was
yeah.
like she
was there for a while.
Yeah, it was under. I don't think it was a year, but it was a number of months.
Oh yeah.
And we get to really kind of meet her roommate and like what goes on there, like how
she
the
has
Empire
a few
runs it.
cellmates.
Well, we get to meet the one we see in Rogue One.
Yeah,
tentacles.
that's the last one. Yeah, the one in Rogue One. Yeah,
we get to kind of see how the Empire runs a prison system, like what it's like in the Star Wars world.
They just make them work. They treat them like
crazy.
crap.
It's crazy. It's such a cool.
They set up the writers set up that environment very. I will say, as far as writing, she set the setting.
It's a very cool
well.
part of Star Wars, that prison
sure.
world, because Star Wars, you don't really think of a prison system like a government would have.
Oh yeah. And they get like 3 strikes if they mess up. They have to go talk to the warden, and it's like it was. I really enjoy that world. I would like to see like a prison breakout movie in Star Wars. Like that would be pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's a pretty cool idea. Maybe on that planet too. So
yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. So I mean, what else you got as far as Rebel Rising
so
goes?
I want to talk about the scenes that are in Rogue One that we saw redos of.
End,
So there was the Saw breaking her out, which wasn't too long. It was just
a little bit more details of what she did.
Well, it's all what's going on in her head, you know.
How long she was there.
You have that, and then you have the scene where they break her out. Because I watched Rogue One like the next day, and I was like trying to pay attention. It's like the same lines of dialogue. And then you have the scene, the big one, which is when the rebellions present the mission to
with
her.
Mon Mothma, Diego Luna's character, Cassian Andor.
If you watch that scene in the movie, she's not talking much. She's just looking at them and thinking.
Well, and you can see the words in her head.
And then you get her thought process in this book, and it's really cool. That was one of my favorite moments in the whole entire book. I think it was the end, the book.
It was like
book.
the last few chapters or last chapter.
Yeah.
Or something.
So and I really enjoyed that.
And it's interesting because when we see her in Rogue One, we think that this girl is basically just all against the rebellion, and everything that they stand for. But in this book, you see that in her entire life, she's gone back and forth.
Oh yeah, well, it's not that she was choosing sides. She was like, I don't want anything to do with any of them. If I can use each side to benefit myself, like she works for an Imperial officer to survive.
Well, and she's questioned herself. She's like, well, if I did this, has this made me a rebel? Like, am I a rebel? Mm-hmm. And so it's really cool to see that play out, that scene with her thoughts.
Well, I will say, if there is a plot, it's about Jyn, like, figuring out her identity and who she is. And by the end of the book, she says she has a line, or there's a line that says that she's finally a rebel now. She finally decided what side she's on, and she kind of joins the rebellion at the end of this book, like we see her do in Rogue One. So I just think it ties, like I said 5 times on this already, it ties Catalyst, Rogue One, and this book all in a nice little bow, and it's a really nice package.
Yeah, if you like Rogue One, or you may have read Catalyst, definitely pick up Rebel Rising. If you have not read Rebel Rising or Catalyst, pick them up both, because like you said, it's a very cool trilogy thing they got going on.
For sure. And just show me what they could do with this canon stuff.
Exactly. I would probably say probably watch Rogue One first, because it's probably the biggest
I'm sure
thing.
most people watching this have already seen Rogue One.
Exactly.
So if you haven't, I would do Catalyst first. And
Catalyst, Rogue One, then Rebel Rising, probably, because you get to know a little bit about Jyn Erso, and then you go back to kind of find out what happened to her. So Catalyst, Rogue One, then Rebel Rising, really, really cool. Maybe even watch the Clone Wars. Find those Saw Gerrera episodes.
You can just watch those 4 episodes.
Clone Wars does 4 episode arcs, and there's one on Saw Gerrera and his sister Steela.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the names of them, but they're later, probably like season 4 or 5, somewhere in there.
And he works with Anakin. Anakin trains them.
Anakin and Ahsoka,
and
which
Obi-Wan
is really
too.
cool.
Those are
it's
some
cool
great
tie-in, and those
episodes.
episodes happened like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So that's a really cool tie-in. Final thoughts. I think Rebel Rising, it's not one of the best Star Wars books, but it's right in the middle of the pack.
Yeah, for sure.
Not great writing, but it has a good heart as far as Star Wars goes.
Definitely,
and it opens the door. We get to know who Jyn is more. We get to see a little bit more of Saw and who he really is. You know, the introductions of the Rebel Alliance and the world that is, you know, kind of collapsed in this empire at that time anyway, right before Rogue One happens and, you know, the years prior. Great character study as well. Just like the Ahsoka Tano book, it's just a cool character study.
That's what I would compare it to the most, is the Ahsoka book, because while these aren't necessarily like great books, like great novels, like I would say Lords of the Sith is a great novel.
Yes.
Bloodline is a great novel. Like Lost Stars, I haven't done Lost Stars yet, but those are the top. Like those are in the top 5, you know. But Ahsoka and Rebel Rising are down there, but they're so cool and so enjoyable to read or listen to because you're learning so much details about these characters that we're attached to. And I definitely recommend picking it up in whatever form you prefer. If you prefer reading it, then good. If you prefer listening to it, which I do because you get all the special effects, you get the noises, the sounds, you get the voices, the characters. I enjoy listening to them.
I'm with you on the audiobooks. Yeah, I mean, if you just enjoy Star Wars and, you know, don't go into these movies these books expecting a lot of action.
Yeah,
it's
there's
really
action
all about
moments,
the characters.
but yeah, it's
all
more getting inside these characters' heads.
If you love Jyn, if you love Ahsoka, it's just about them, and you'll love their characters even more after watching or listening to these books. I keep because I'm listening,
reading,
it's
listening.
The same thing. It's the same thing. So yeah, I mean, final thoughts on Rebel Rising, and you know, a thought on what people would love about this book.
Yeah, I just think it's really good, and it gives so much perspective on Jyn and just the galaxy, the state of the galaxy during this time period, honestly. And you know, if you want to go into Rogue One, like you could literally end this book and watch Rogue One right after, and it'll feel so cool. So yeah, definitely pick Rebel Rising up if you have the time and money.
Yeah, well, that's going to wrap up our Canon Connection for today. We just covered Rebel Rising. We're going to be trying to do these a lot. We have a couple of books we're upcoming. We're probably going to do Thrawn next.
Yeah, I'm thinking Thrawn.
I know you want to do Lost Stars.
I want to do Lost Stars, so maybe you can do a New Dawn.
I haven't done a New Dawn.
Stars.
Yeah, we might split that up so we're on the same page.
And then we could review both of them right after.
Exactly.
We want to do Bloodline too. We're going to try to get our newest members, Keith and Brian, on that Bloodline review because they love it. And Bloodline is my favorite Star Wars canon book.
I can't say it's my favorite, but it's probably top 3.
I love Lords of the Sith.
It's top 3.
But
it's top 3.
It's Princess Leia. Like,
wait till you read Lost Stars.
Is Lost Stars your favorite?
Lost Stars is probably
a lot of people's favorite are Lost Stars.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I can't see myself liking it more than Bloodline, but it's Claudia Grace, the same writer, so maybe.
Exactly.
She's a fantastic writer.
She's so good. She's so good. Well, Jacob, let them know where you find you online, man.
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Jacob Bartley _, of course, on Apocalypse Movies. Check out the Comic Hero Talk Show where we talk about all things comic book movies and a little bit of comics and some Star Wars comics on there too, so go check that out.
Yeah, that video will be up on our end screen. We'll put that up on our most recent episode. You can find me, Jake Berlin, at Qui-Gon Jake, Twitter, Instagram. Check out the Padawan Podcast, our All Star Wars show, movie reviews, trailer reactions, daily news bits. Try to do a bunch of cool things here on Apocalypse. And of course, apocalypsemovies.com, where we've got all kinds of cool articles, editorials, trailers, everything. Thank you for joining us, Jacob. Thank you again. Until next time, may the Force be with you.